second floor. So.
Yeah, and I think he goes back.
I'd like to call the City of Post Falls Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting January 9th to order. Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Again, a reminder, make sure and silence your cell phone. If you intend to speak regarding one of the public hearings tonight, make sure that you sign up and turn the paperwork in. And we'll start with roll call.
Hampe.
Here.
Bishop.
Here.
Latham.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Kimball.
Present.
Carey.
Here.
Steffensen.
Here.
Mr. Manley, any adjustments or amendments to the agenda this evening?
No, there is not.
Okay, seeing none, do we have any declaration of conflict? Do we have one?
I do. I have a conflict on public hearings A and B, and will be stepping down to present.
Okay. Which moves us to the consent calendar.
Yes, items A is the December 12th, 2017 Planning and Zoning Meeting Minutes. And there is no other.
Okay,
I would make a motion to approve it as presented.
A second.
it's been moved and seconded. Call for vote.
Steffensen.
Yes.
Carey.
Yes.
Kimball.
Abstain?
Davis.
Yes.
Latham.
Yes.
Bishop.
Yes.
Hampe.
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda is citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on issues that are not on the agenda. Comments that are planned for future meetings would also be asked to be held for that meeting. Anybody that has any citizen issues this evening? Seeing none, we will move on. If I am correct, we have no unfinished and/or old business.
No, there's not.
Okay, that leads us to the meat of the evening, which are our public hearings. Again, before we start public hearings, remember that we are at City Hall and conducting a meeting, so I always ask that we do our best to set our emotions aside as far as cheering and clapping, and we will conduct this in a very, very civil manner. That being said, we'll go ahead and open the first public hearing, Plaza Zone Change File Number ZC-17-05. Tavis presenting.
Chairman Davis, quickly, I want to remind the commission that we're running hearings A and B concurrently, both of the Plaza 41 items, because they concern the same project and the same piece of property. In the interest of time, those will be run concurrently. So if you're testifying, you can present testimony on both issues at the same time, rather than having people come back up and speak two times about the same issue.
Perfect.
Two separate votes, though?
There'd be two separate
motions.
votes.
Or two motions?
Yep,
Okay, yes,
so-
okay.
Yeah, so everyone in the audience, just to make sure that we are presenting both Plaza 41 zone change and the special use, again, together. So if you've signed up to speak on both of those, you will have the opportunity to speak just the one time and address both of them.
So we're opening both hearings at this.
Yep,
at this
so we'll
point.
go ahead, in addition to ZC-17-05, we'll also open special use permit number SUP-17-01. Thank you for reminding me. Tavis, it is all yours, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tavis Schmidt, Associate Planner with the City of Post Falls. I'm presenting the staff report tonight for the Plaza 41 zone change and special use permit. The owner for this project is, or for the property is GFP Incorporated, and the applicant is Rudine Development. The requested action this evening is the Planning and Zoning Commission is being asked to review two items. The first item is the proposed zone change from industrial to community commercial services. The second action is a special use permit for a 68-unit multifamily development. There is some criteria with that. The zone change can stand alone. It can the recommendation to City Council can be approved or denied, or with conditions. The special use permit is contingent somewhat on the zone change approval or denial, or any other conditions that the Commission chooses this evening. Right here shows, this is for the zone change, highlighted in red here is the one parcel that is, it's currently zoned industrial, and the request is to change it to community commercial services. This is the parcel, it's directly north of Spokane Teachers Credit Union and a little bit west, of Wendy's. Right in there. There's STCU and there's the Wendy's. Highway 41 is right in this area. This slide shows that parcel and 4 adjacent parcels that are contained within the special use permit here. And so the zone changes on this south parcel right here, and then the special use permit encompasses that parcel and this one, and then the 3 small ones up here on the north side of Covington Avenue. So the project is located at the intersection of Primrose Lane and Covington Avenue on the west side of Highway 41. The property sizes for the zone change, that parcel is approximately 1.45 acres. For the special use permit, the total project area is approximately 3.8 acres. Currently, all parcels are vacant. Utilities, the water and sewer, are to be provided by the city of Post Falls. This map shows the existing zoning. Within the black cross-hatching here is the total project area. Under this parcel here, you can see that it's a light gray under there. The light gray is the industrial zoning. Red is community commercial services. The yellow within the area is R1, which is a single-family residential. Up here on the north side of Mullen, we've got some kind of mustard browns, yellows there, and those are slightly higher density residential zoning there on the north side of Mullen. Staff in the Public Services Department reviewed these proposals, found them to be consistent with the goals and policies found within the comprehensive plan. The proposal is consistent with the future land use map. I'll show that in a minute here. The proposed zoning is compatible with the surrounding environment. It is primarily commercial in the area. It's compatible with the adjoining street classifications. Both Primrose and Covington are classified as minor collectors. This map shows the future land use for the zone change. It's right here. So this is where the parcel for the zone change is proposed. All of the red is for the future land use is designated to be commercial. The purple in this area is industrial. The yellow is residential. And then a lot of this white area is actually outside the city limits of Post Falls. It's still within the Kootenai County's jurisdiction. And then we've got the I-90 corridor going along this area here. So this just shows that for the zone change, that parcel within the comprehensive plan is designated to be commercial as opposed to industrial or residential. Within the municipal code, there's some zone change review criteria. The first one is that zoning is assigned following consideration of such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features. Commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. Regarding the special use permit, within the Post Falls Municipal Code, Title 18, 16.010, subsection B2, it identifies that approval of a special use permit is necessary in order to construct a residential use within the community commercial services zone. The municipal code goes on to further state that residential uses may be allowed in the CCS zone at densities and the bulk and placement standards of the R3 zone. And the R3 zone is a high-density multifamily residential zone. It's the long title of that zone. Regarding the application for a special use permit, a special use permit may be approved as presented, conditionally approved, or denied by the Planning and Zoning Commission upon determining the following 4 criteria within the Post Falls Municipal Code. And again, this is for the special use permit. The first one is implementation of the special use would or would not conform to the purposes of the applicable zoning district. So staff's comment is that it will conform to the purposes of the zoning district through the issuance of the special use permit. In the municipal code, it is identified in the table of permitted uses that in a community commercial services, multifamily is a permitted use through a special use permit. So that's how that comment is there. And like I stated a few moments ago, any residential can develop to the standards of the R3 zoning. This area is an evolving commercial corridor, and the proposal could complement future development. The second criteria is whether the proposed use constitutes an allowable special use as established for the zoning district involved and complies with all other applicable laws, ordinances, and regulations of the city and state. Staff comments, the proposed use is allowable through the issuance of a special use permit, and site plan review will ensure further compliance, such as location of access, parking standards, landscaping, other site development standards there. The third criteria is whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public or with land uses in the vicinity of the proposal. Staff's comments, the proposed use will be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public and with land uses in the vicinity of the proposal, and it is located within the Highway 41 commercial corridor. The Highway 41 commercial corridor has been identified as going approximately a half mile to the east and a half mile to the west of Highway 41. The fourth criteria is whether the proposed use will or will not comply with the goals and policies found within the comprehensive plan. Staff's comment is permitting higher density residential use in the community commercial services zone complies with the goals and policies within the comprehensive plan. This is a kind of a conceptual or an initial layout of the site here. So north is actually to the right side here. So right in this area would be where Wendy's is. Right here would be STCU. And so we've got Primrose Lane going north-south here and Covington going east-west. Staff comments regarding transportation, and this is for the zone change, is that the change from industrial to community commercial services would not materially change the findings or recommendations of the City of Post Falls Transportation Master Plan. Regarding water reclamation, there's existing sewer infrastructure is located adjacent to the subject properties, and the proposed zone change and development is not anticipated to have significant impacts to the city's water reclamation system. Regarding domestic water, existing water infrastructure is located adjacent to the subject property, and the proposed zone change and development is not anticipated to have a significant impact to the city's water system. We send out comments for all projects. We send them out to to adjacent jurisdictions, and we send them to adjacent governmental and quasi-governmental agencies. This would include Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, Idaho Department of Lands, Post Falls School District, the Highway District, and soliciting comments. Often we don't get much response from anybody, and when any agency or entity has comments, they will respond. And so here we got the response we received was from Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, and they stated that they're neutral regarding both proposals. This is just the zone change criteria, just kind of summary, because previously I had them on a couple different slides, and so this is just them all together. Here, just saying that zoning is assigned following consideration of street classification, traffic patterns, future land uses, etc. Commercial and high-density residential zonings typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications, and then limited or neighborhood commercial, lower-density residential is typically assigned for properties as they proceed farther away from the higher-intensity urban activity. So at this time, I would stand for any questions that you may have of me.
Any questions for staff at this time? Thank you, sir.
Escape. Perfect. Zone change. No, nice. Perfect. All right. My name is Ray Kimball. I'm a civil engineer for Whipple Consulting Engineers. My address is 21 South Pines in Spokane Valley. I'm here tonight with Todd Whipple. Todd is a civil engineer with our company and is a recognized expert in the field of traffic and transportation engineering, and he'll be here talking about traffic with regards to these proposals. So a lot of this is going to be review because Tavis hit it all. And also I'll speed through it as quickly as possible in the interest of brevity. You've seen most of it in our narrative, as well as in what Tavis put together. So the project site is highlighted there in red for the zone change. And there it is marked in the hatch mark as the existing zoning. And you can see that it is light industrial. Comprehensive plan shows that it is supposed to be commercial. So proposed to be commercial. Interestingly enough, if we go backwards and we look at all that light industrial, or that industrial area to the west, I don't know why it ended up being annexed in as industrial, but it's clear that the comprehensive plan has commercial aspirations for that entire area. And I believe the fact that the comp plan right now says that the little island of purple there is to be industrial is based on the existing industrial uses there, and they didn't want to preclude those existing uses. So with regards to the standards for approval, all information is required by the application of forms by local jurisdiction and state law shall be provided. We've provided all that information, including legal descriptions, applications, fees, required maps, comprehensive plan analysis, and the ownership lists. Second standard for approval is it must conform to the comprehensive plan. In this case, it's mostly a matter of housekeeping. So we've got this little chunk of industrial that the comprehensive plan, future land use map shows this property to be commercial. And as talked about in the narrative as well as in the staff report, the zone change meets the goals and policies of the comp plan. And so now I'll jump into special use permit. Sorry, I had two of these. I wasn't quite prepared to do. I wasn't sure if I was going to do one or two public hearings tonight. So with regard to the special use permit, project location is here. There we are. Project location is right here. You have 3 lots to the north of Covington and 2 lots to the south. So the site plan you've seen, it's fairly straightforward. We have 3 buildings on the north, 3 lots, and then we've got it's like 6 buildings on the south, 4 apartments, and then right here is a little clubhouse. So these are building elevations. So these are conceptual elevations based on a project that Rudine Development did just up Highway 41 right next to the Goodwill. So pretty straightforward. This one right here is the garage under product, and this is the 3-story. So we'll have multiple types of buildings. These right here are photos from the Belciello project, which is adjacent to the Goodwill project, or Goodwill on Highway 41 and 16th. This gives you a pretty good idea of what those buildings will look like. And that's the clubhouse. So they've got a bunch of accents, architectural features. There's a bunch of rock work. It's kind of hard to see in that. With regards to the standards for approval for the special use permit, implementation of the special use permit needs to conform to the purposes of the applicable zoning district. The zoning code states that residential uses may be allowed within the zone at densities permitted by high-density residential, R3 zone, by special use permit when they do not compromise present uses. That's probably the big part here. So really, this is kind of one of those interesting things, you know, that Highway 41 and Mullen corridors is the lots that we're talking about were platted. Some of them were platted in 1998 was when they first became lots, or they've been vacant since then. It's been 20 years. And I've lived here my entire life, and I've seen that grow out there. And I know there was a Noodles Express. It's now a FedEx Kinko's. Businesses have come and gone in that little strip mall. And many of them, because even though it is on a highway, a lot of those residents are going to and from Rathdrum. And they're not necessarily stopping in that area. And it's important that the comprehensive plan, I'll talk a little bit about that. In the Highway 41 plan, both of them specifically talk about within the Highway 41 corridor about encouraging mixed uses. And there's a couple ways to do mixed use. You can do commercial downstairs and residential upstairs, or you can intermix areas of commercial and residential. In this case, we have an area of that historically has struggled a little bit from a commercial standpoint, commercial business standpoint, and by putting 68 multifamily units in here, will infuse a customer base that is within walking distance. And I know we talk about it, we see it all the time. You know, comp plan says that it should be within walking distance, and maybe that's a half mile, maybe that's a quarter mile. This is right next door, right across the street. You know, right across the street, we've got a daycare center. So having that right across the street, or in this case, right next to a multifamily residential is fantastic. It's a perfect mix of two uses, commercial and residential. Starbucks next door, Thomas Hammer, you know, Subway, Wendy's, all those things. Those are great. Those are commercial uses and commercial businesses that will benefit from having people right next door being able to walk across the street to get to those businesses and utilize their services without having to get into their car and contribute to traffic congestion in the area. So, with regards to traffic, I'm going to bring up Mr. Whipple here, and he's going to talk a little bit about how the allowed uses under the commercial community services versus what we're proposing and what the impacts of both of them would be and how they compare.
Hi, my name is Todd Whipple, and usually I'm here because Ray just pushes back and then tells me the same day that he has a hearing I'm supposed to come and talk to you guys. Is it this?
No, it's that button and then mouse.
So as it relates to the commercial use versus residential use, I think it's pretty straightforward. This property is, as has already been explained, a part of it is already zoned commercial and a part of it is light industrial. So what we did was we took a look at what were the allowed uses under the current zoning, just to kind of give you a representation of what you could do right now under strictly a building permit without any public involvement whatsoever, other than somebody bringing a project forward to you and applying for a building permit. So we looked at the surrounding uses, and the SDCU is already on industrial zone ground, so you could, on the industrial piece that we're asking for a rezone on, go ahead and put another bank. Well, you should put a bank next to another bank. I don't really know. There's already a bank just another half a block away. But as it relates to just a comparison of uses that could be built on the existing property versus what the proposal is, that's really just what I'm here to talk about. So on that existing light industrial piece of property, you could put another bank just like SDCU, which means you would have another generator. We have that use up there. We have a 5,000 square foot bank. How that works is the Institute of Transportation Engineers, I think I've had this conversation with you before, has a book of typical generations associated with any specific land use. And so when you take a look what would make sense on this property going forward on the 3.8 acres would be, you could put a 5,000 square foot bank, you could put a 8,500 square foot strip center to be a secondary strip center, not necessarily a Highway 41 strip center, but you would still have a kind of a strip use of bays available for rent. And you could put a 2,500 square foot fast food restaurant, whether that's a high turnover sit-down restaurant, you know, a Denny's kind of a thing or something like that, even though there's a lot of them on the other side of the freeway, there's not a lot of them in this area. Those three uses, as you can see from this slide, would generate a total of 265 PM peak hour trips. Those trips would be 132 in and 132 out. If you look at the generation for 67 or 68 multifamily units, their generation rate using the same book, which is the nationally accepted guidelines for trip generation, would only generate 42 PM peak hour trips, 29 in and 13 out. So on one hand, you've got a situation where if this property, under pure building permit situation, would be allowed to develop and people came in with building permits, you would generate nearly 6 times the amount of traffic from those uses being developed as you would from a multifamily developed project. Now, what that would equate to as it relates to the city is we did this for the same, they took the same exact example and looked at your impact fee guidelines, and those specific uses based on $1.71 per square foot of development would only generate, through impact fees, they have 6 times the traffic, but they would only generate $27,360 as it relates to your impact fees based on your current impact fee schedule. Yet, those 67 multifamily units that have to pay $873.26 or whatever it is would generate $57,203.26 worth of impact fees into the city coffers. So it's kind of interesting. Your impact fees, even though it seems like at $1.71 is a lot, when you look at the kind of trip generation that's allowed in the area, for 6 times the traffic, you get half the money. And so it seems to me that, you know, taking the allowed uses from a transportation perspective and going with a multifamily and or a special use permit from the city benefits you in so many ways as it relates to transportation. Fewer cars, more available money for impacts associated throughout the city. And I think more importantly, which is harder to quantify, I think you'll get the idea, is commercial banks, businesses, if you looked at those trips in and out, they are 50-50. You have a lot more trips out and a lot more trips in. Multifamily, residential is usually mostly a work-home base trip, we call it. So they're coming from work, they're going home. It's more of an inbound trip. So when I went through the staff report, there was a lot of comments about, well, you can't get out at night, you can't do this, and you can't do that. Well, residential changes the conversation because it's more of an inbound trip. It's a trip that anybody who's in the current area doesn't really take right now because there are no inbound trips. So Ray asked me to come out here and talk to you a little bit about traffic. We do a lot of traffic work in our firm, and if you have any questions, I think that's it for me, and he's going to close up. Thank you.
Any questions?
Right there.
Thank you, Todd. Ray Kimball again for the record. And I'll run through these really quickly. So standards of approval, Tavis went through them pretty well, and I'll hit them as well. So the standard for approval for a special use permit is that the proposed condition constitutes an allowable special use as established in the district. Multifamily is an allowed special use in the CCS zone, and as conditioned, all other applicable laws, ordinances, and regulations will be met. Proposed standard of proposed use will be compatible with health, safety, and welfare of the public and land uses in the vicinity. Not only will the proposed use be support the surrounding commercial businesses, but the traffic impact will be less than if developed multifamily versus commercial. The third standard of approval is proposed use needs to comply with goals and policies found within the comprehensive plan. Based on the staff report as well as the narrative, we did a full comprehensive plan analysis and identified all the goals and policies that are supported by this in the comprehensive plan. And in conclusion, the proposed multifamily use meets all the requirements for the approved, for approval as set forth in the code. Therefore, we are requesting approval as presented and conditioned in the staff report. We are also requesting approval of the zone change from industrial to CCS. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Ray at this time? No? Thank you.
Thanks.
Public comment.
Tavis, I'll let you do that. Thank you.
These are all for this one, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so we have no public comment for, we have no neutral, we have several that are in opposition that wish to speak. Again, you have 4 minutes. State your name and your address. We'll start off with Mr. Flowers. I know you're signed up for 2. But you can do it in 1, right, sir?
Good evening, P&Z Board. Well, there's a few very choice points against this particular project. Let's start out with the requirements for high-density multifamily housing. You're supposed to have a higher road class than what is there. If there, these particular roads that are laid out in there are not meant for that type of traffic. As we can see from the layout there, 68 units, both sides of the street. 68 units, equivalent to, say, 2 cars per unit. We'll take it on the low side of things. 136 vehicles dumped onto that street. We are dumping them onto one of the most congested, the most dangerous stretches there is of Highway 41. The state is coming in 2020, 21, and they're going to broaden everything, but that's from Mullen north. The section from Mullen south to the freeway is a gigantic bottleneck now. It cannot handle any more vehicles. It's just insane to even think about dumping any more on there. And where are these people from them apartments going to go? They're either going to go north, south, east, or west, which takes them right to 41 so they can either get on the freeway or head north towards Rafter. It makes no sense. They were talking about the number of trips. Well, what about the way the land is zoned at this present time? It's zoned industrial. All right, you take the wood mill plant that's sitting there in that area right now. I would bet you that his employees don't go running off in the middle of the afternoon. I say leave it industrial because it would be a great location for a small manufacturing outfit to build. To dump residential into this area right now, it does not fit. It doesn't meet the road classifications, and all it does is add to a gigantic problem we already have on 41. The state recognizes, anybody that drives that thing daily recognizes the mess that's happening down there. Just in the last week, there were 2 multi-vehicle accidents in that general area. It's already too full to begin with. And I would ask you all to please deny the zone changing, and that way it will basically nullify the special use, because it's the wrong thing to put down there in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. Also wishing to speak in opposition is Bob Scharf. And I do apologize if I accidentally butcher anyone's name. That is not my intention.
You're right on.
Oh, well, okay, thank you.
Bob Scharf. I live on 3661 East Primrose Lane, so I'm within about 150 feet of the area that they're proposing to change. I'm just wondering if there's been any traffic studies done down there, getting on to Highway 41 or Mullen, any of that area. As Mr. Flowers pointed out, it's nearly a disaster now, and I agree with that. I've lived at this location for 44 plus years. As you all can see, I've seen a lot of changes. Some for the good, but not all. And I sure would like to see some consideration done on as far as the traffic study goes down there before this is approved. I think Mr. Flowers said it, in that I don't think the streets are designed for the kind of traffic that we would be putting on them down in there. And as far as getting on 41 there by Wendy's, now any time of day is a big wait, let alone during a rush hour, especially if you want to get on the freeway and go east. It's pretty much impossible. In fact, it is impossible unless some soul lets you cut in front of them. So anyway, I just urge you to take a closer look at sidewalks, the streets, and the traffic in that area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Brian Peterson wishes to speak in opposition.
Good evening. I'm Brian Peterson, and I reside at 12362 East Bunkle Road in Athol. And I own a few lots here, not far from where this is proposed to occur. I'm here to speak in opposition to the special use permit, and I do so for 2 reasons. I guess it's been presented, you've got to evaluate this proposal against 4 different criteria, and the third of those is that the proposed use has to be compatible with land uses in the vicinity of the proposed use. And right now, to the west has been presented for approximately 2,000 feet. The lots are zoned industrial, and the comprehensive plan shows that they may in the future be changed to commercial, but they currently are industrial, and there's no guarantee that they'll change to commercial. And according to the city's municipal code, there are a lot of allowed uses within the industrial zone, some of which include a lumber yard, a heavy equipment repair, tractor, heavy truck, trailer, dealership, leasing, a wide variety of different types of manufacturing, including heavy transportation equipment manufacturing. Also allowed uses in those zones are construction equipment storage facilities, automotive impound yards, warehouse distribution storage facilities, truck warehouse and truck terminals, truck and freight transportation services, and solid waste collection and storage. And so, I guess those are not compatible with residential or a multifamily development next to it. And I guess you don't have to take my word for it. The city's already acknowledged that isn't, in that multifamily developments are not allowed in industrial zones. And so, I just can't be any argument that multifamily development located immediately adjacent to industrial zone, I mean, there is a compatibility issue. They aren't compatible. You're also, the commission is also required to determine that the applicant's proposal complies with the goals and policies found within the comp plan. So the city's economic development goal states that the city will work to help retain and promote expansion of its existing business and industry, and to attract new business and clean industry that enhances and diversifies the economic base. It's pretty simple. You're going to help the new businesses and the existing businesses and bring new ones in. In the future land use portion of the comp plan, under the industrial policies, there were several statements made. One of those is that new industrial development should be directed or planned to minimize trucking through residential areas. Another statement is industrial uses located adjacent to existing residential uses should not create noise, odor, air pollution, and/or visual pollution greater than levels normally associated with surrounding residential activities. And then the third statement is the city should require industrial development to provide landscape buffers and to mitigate potential adverse impacts to adjoining residential areas. So those statements don't really apply right now because there is no residential use adjacent to an industrial. If the commission grants the applicant's request for the special use permit, there's going to be an existing residential use. All of these things will apply, and they will prevent the city from helping the existing businesses in the industrial zone expand, or prevent the city from bringing in new businesses. So that is directly contradictory to the city's stated goal. So based on those two criteria that you have to make this decision by, I would urge you to deny the applicant's request for a special use permit.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's see, I can't see the last name here. Is it Gary that wishes to speak in opposition if here? You are here. Okay, sir.
Okay. Good evening. My name's Gary Nystrom. I live at 7094 West Big Sky Drive, which happens to be in the county, but I own a piece of property, 1317 North Forsythia Circle, so I think I have some say into this dog and pony show. Okay, let me just bring up a couple things. I kept hearing the word may, and may can be a very big word that we may use something. But when Mr. Flowers was talking, something brought me to this discussion. I'm opposed to it because I think the one that's down by the Goodwill is probably in a great place. This is not, to me, in a great place because I could see cars cutting through the Numerica kind of parking lot, trying to get over on, help me on Mullen instead of going all the way around. And the gentleman, please, using a daycare center there when it's full, I know, because we try to get a son in there. A lot of these activities, just because something is there doesn't necessarily mean it's available to the people that live there. My worries will be kids running across the street to go to the Sonic and getting hit there in the most congested place in God's green earth that we've made. I wonder how many businesses during the weekend, if there's kids there, are going to want their kids maybe wandering around and going on somebody else's commercial or industrial property, being, maybe mischief or just looking at stuff. That's why I say that area is not really good for housing. It's not, I don't think it was meant for housing. It should stay non-housing. Put this housing in somewhere better place by New Life Church or somewhere in there. That is the best place. That should stay the blind guy company or somebody trying to do a business, and that's where I think that whole development should stay at. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. In opposition, wishing to speak, Mike? Agneson, okay. Mr. Agneson, you have 4 minutes, sir.
Mike Agason, I reside at 5712 North Mount Carroll in Dalton Gardens, but we have a business 3700 East Covington. We are directly adjacent to the proposed development site. I'm going to try to speed read through this here. So timing is everything. January 1st, Post Falls Mayor Jacobson quoted as saying in the Coeur d'Alene Press, "We need to broaden our tax base, take the burden off residential properties. We will work with our partners to help our current businesses prosper and expand to attract new business and to create good jobs. One-time impact fees are not long-term business, nor are they good jobs." Further in the article, it mentions the city is updating its master traffic plan and goes on to speak the Southeast Way Mullen Avenue traffic study. Yet we are here discussing dropping substantial multi-housing project in an overly congested and ironically already expanding established commercial and industrial area. I can't in a lot of time cover all the different areas that I would like to focus on, but I'm going to speak to mostly the traffic. There are fundamental problems with rezoning from industrial to commercial and then a special use permit basically in a non-conforming project for the current zoning all in one fell swoop. Anyone who uses the Highway 41 corridor, regardless of direction, can attest to the bottleneck that occurs at all hours of the day, and it is not limited to commute hours only. In addition to funneling traffic from the many surrounding communities, the area has also become a transitory stop for people commuting on Highway 90. 8 major franchise food operations, 6 of those are drive-through, 3 major drive-through coffee stands, other restaurants, businesses such as ours, all in that immediate vicinity. School buses, RVs, charter buses, semi-trucks are all common fixtures on Primrose. You can see them from the window of my office as they are stopping to take advantage of the fast food restaurants in that area. They park on Primrose, which would be adjacent to entrance to all these proposed apartment buildings. And I'd also be remiss not to mention that the Primrose Covington thoroughfare is the superhighway to the Walmart. Anybody exiting I-90 cuts along Wendy's over to Walmart. Counter to the statement in the application by staff that this area is mostly developed, I did a quick scan of Casey Webb, CUNY County Assessor's Office. I count 13 vacant lots to the tune of another 10.5 acres that's of undeveloped land, and that's in that corridor that would be from Highway 41 to Cecil. Falls within that Post Falls corridor. That's exclusive of the proposed lots for the down zoning. If I include JFP, I think they have one more additional lot on Highway 41. That would jump that to 12 acres of undeveloped land in that zone in that corridor as of right now. Fair to say, avoiding any other special use permits, those properties are all represent future businesses and jobs created in this narrow corridor. And for that to occur, each will need their slice of infrastructure, road use, and traffic flow. I want to highlight a couple comments from the KMPO Highway 41 Corridor Master Plan. As of October 2016, traffic volumes are projected to increase by approximately 64% within the corridor by the future out year of 2035, 64%. The plan integrates land use and transportation plans which sustain community development, build an environmentally sound plan for preserving highway integrity and functions while enhancing safe local access options, provide off-corridor access alternatives which complement local development, maintain commercial viability, coordinate jurisdictional public interest, and provide direction for adjoining jurisdictions in the future management of the corridor. The land use transportation policy guides both private investment and public expenditures within the State Highway 41 corridor. comprehensive land use plans and zoning ordinance set a framework for how and when the development will be allowed to occur, and therefore how much traffic will be added to the transportation system. I saw no mention of KMPO's master plan in the applications, and I'm not sure if the staff is commenting on this traffic plan or another. I'm also unsure where in all of this forthcoming Celtics Way Mullen traffic study the mayor mentions falls into place. Forthcoming plan, haven't seen it yet, so. Lost my place here, sorry about that.
I was gonna say, we'll need you to wrap up here in just a
Yep,
second.
yep, okay. In conclusion, I can't possibly have how this proposed rezoning and application for special use permits in any way, shape, or form is conducive to promoting business, addressing traffic, and can easily be argued as actually a detriment to the safety and concern to the citizens of Post Falls. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Atkinson, I correct, you already had submitted this, what you had just read here?
Yeah.
Okay,
In
perfect.
addition to what I sent out.
Okay, perfect.
You know, I'd also like to add that I'm a business owner. Any questions for us as far as?
Excuse me, sir, we need to have you up at the mic, so we have to record this.
Yep.
You know, lots of representation here from folks that are residents. We are actually an operating business in an industrial zone. We are an industrial business. Never been asked about concerns of what we do. I mean, 6 to 7 semis a day come to our property, delivering wood, processes coming in, going out, zoned accordingly. They all navigate that small corridor through Primrose, Covington. So I guess I'm opening myself up to any questions as far as how this actually, affects a functioning and operating business in that corridor. So, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. And Warren, just a question. Mr. Nystrom got up and spoke, but he had also submitted a letter. Do I need to?
If he's covered it, you don't need to read it, as long as
Like covered
everybody's read
sir?
it.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Rebuttal.
Thanks. Ray Kimball for the record. Just kind of hit, maybe a little bit scattered, but I'll try to hit through most of the rebuttal points here. Mr. Flowers talked about road classification. He stated that in error, in fact, that Primrose and Covington are not a higher road class. In fact, they are. Minor collectors in the city of Post Falls are considered a higher road classification. And so therefore, we meet the requirement for a higher road classification. With regards to, a lot of the comments, testimony was with regards to traffic. I think Mr. Whipple hit that pretty hard, that there's a net benefit when it comes to potential traffic to going to a special use permit multifamily, and by a big margin, 6 times. So, not to mention, it's interesting. A lot of the people who came up and talked, they're either business owners or property owners to the west. I don't see any of the commercial retail business owners to the east come and talk, and of course, no one ever does jump up and say, "Hey, yeah, put some more customers right next door." And it's unfortunate that they don't. With regards to the zone change, I'm just going to hit this really quick. If this were an annexation and we were to be annexing any of this property in the area, it would be commercial, CCS, no doubt. And the comprehensive plan says it should be commercial. And that's the reason that we're asking for CCS zoning, is that's what the comprehensive plan says. If we were to be coming into the city today and annexing it, that's what the city would say it should be. That's what the comprehensive plan says it should be. And that's really what it should be. With regards to traffic congestion, it's kind of funny. I was talking to a guy the other day who lives on Pole Line just east of Highway 41. He was complaining to me about the traffic. He said, God, the traffic is horrible. I asked, well, what do you mean? And he goes, I have to look both ways when I leave my driveway. And the reason I say that, and there was a request for a traffic study. Public hearing number 4 is our traffic master plan. City of Post Falls has put in incredible expense in going through and doing a very comprehensive traffic master plan, which includes traffic studies. And if you go through all those traffic studies, the intersections of Covington and Thornton, which is right here. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Tavis. So the intersection of Covington and Thornton, which is right here. Thornton and Highway 41, which is right there. This intersection right here, I don't know what, I can't remember the name of the street. As well as this intersection here. And really all these intersections, with the exception of the one at Mullen and Highway 41, those are all, even in the 2025 no-build scenario, which means there's zero traffic improvements to the area. Those are all functioning at an acceptable level of service based on an actual traffic study that the City of Post Falls paid for. So with regards to traffic study, and all of those are with background growth at rates for commercial, which the actual traffic generated by a multifamily development is less, as you've seen tonight. So although traffic in the Highway 41 corridor is significantly influenced by the city of Rathdrum and all the people commuting from Rathdrum down to I-90 and to Coeur d'Alene and to Spokane, there are ITD improvements slated for the interchange, Highway 41 interchange. Those are, Rob can speak to that if you want him to. As well as a Highway 41 improvement project that's slated for 2020. So these are all improvement projects and transportation improvement projects that are in the vicinity, that are slated, they're on the document, they're funded. We've got a smaller traffic impact than you would see with a commercial use that is outright allowed. Wouldn't even have to come to City of Post Falls or to Planning Commission, just go get a building permit, site plan, away they go. So we've got less traffic impact. We've got a benefit to the local business owners who have, the retail and commercial business owners in the vicinity. We look over, Mr. Peterson talked about the allowed uses in industrial and how horrible they can be. But we're looking at, we look at these, this right here is a 1.4 acre lot. We look at these, this has got to be maybe an acre. Okay. We're not going to see a junkyard. Okay. We're not going to see we're going to see maybe a truck repair shop. Great. Maybe someone who works in a brand new truck repair shop lives in an apartment and wants to walk to work. That's less that's less traffic on the feet, in the system. And it's a benefit, not only is it a benefit to the commercial uses in the area, but it's a benefit to anyone who works in the area and lives in an apartment and wants to move into these. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ray?
I'd like to to know more about whatever improvements are going to be around the intersection there at 41 and 90. There.
I'll
have to defer that.
I was going to say, thank you, Ray. We'll go ahead and bring up engineering.
Well, I have a question for
Ray.
Ray.
Okay. We will address it.
Yeah. Changing it to the commercial zoning, would that still allow light manufacturing at that location?
I'll defer that to Tavis. I don't have my zoning code right in front of me.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tavis Schmidt, Associate Planner for the record. Community Commercial Services allows a variety of uses. switch to here. So it's this column here with the CCS, and if we go down the column there, anytime there's a P that's an outright permitted use. And S is a special use permit. And then over here, so if we go down here, these are general sales or services. So we've got retail stores, postal services, packaging, things like that. And you had asked about light manufacturing. Let me go. So if we go here, so the CCS here, we've got industrial and manufacturing uses. So we've got bakery products or permitted use, and all these other ones are special uses, and I'll just let you visually read what those special uses are. So millwork, veneer, plywood manufacturing is allowable in the CCS zone through a special use permit. So a lot of them are just through special use permits. We've got a glassware products manufacturing as a permitted use in the CCS. So there are a variety of manufacturing type uses that could be allowed through either outright permitted or primarily through special use permits.
Okay.
Commissioner Bishop, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions for Ray while he's still good? Okay. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Tavis. Mr. Paulus, you want to come up from engineering? I believe you might have some information that would be extremely pertinent.
Commissioner Davis, members of the commission, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. Commissioner Steffensen, you specifically were requesting what type of projects that are planned in the area. Later tonight, we are going to be talking about the Transportation Master Plan update. That has not been adopted, but I will mention that from that plan, the City of Post Falls does not have any planned projects along Mullen Avenue between now and 2035 to address traffic. Within that proposed Transportation Master Plan update, we are showing some minor degradation of Thornton Street and Regal, which Regal is the roadway that's in between Thornton and Highway 41. That Ray was pointing to earlier, right there. But nothing other than slightly lower levels of service, nothing that's failing. As far as the Idaho Transportation Department, they are on track for constructing improvements to Highway 41 from Mullen Avenue north, as Mr. Flowers had mentioned, in the year 2020. The Idaho Transportation Department also is currently, they recently hired David Evans and Associates as a design consultant to look at the I-90 Highway 41 interchange and to start moving forward with the conceptual process of laying out alternate designs for that interchange. It is ITD's plan and hope to have construction drawings put together in the next few years, and that they would be able to move forward with construction in the year 2024 or sooner if dollars were to be able to be available at a sooner time frame. The Idaho Transportation Department generally works on a 6-year program, which they call their State Transportation Improvement Plan. And so right now, 2024 is 6 years out. That means that they do have funding set up at the state level for projects out that 6-year time frame. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Any other transportation questions?
None? No. Okay. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff before we close things out? None? No. Okay. Go ahead and close the hearing. Open it up for comment. Who wants to start?
Well, I can go ahead and start. The zone change in itself, I don't feel that the zone change in itself is a bad thing. I think that it does make sense with future land use. I can see that. I just don't feel comfortable with it's a conduit to multifamily. and high-density multifamily being there. If I had them completely separate, I would have to say that I would probably feel comfortable enough to recommend the first part of it, the actual zone change from industrial to commercial. But as it sits, and I feel like it's just a conduit to the high density, I don't like it. I don't feel comfortable with it.
Okay. Mr. Bishop?
To piggyback off that, I don't think ever having industrial and any sort of residential right next to each other is a good idea. I would like to see it stay industrial. I could see it going commercial. I definitely do not feel that. There's pros and cons for having multifamily there. I think that for me the cons outweigh the pros. So I would probably just say that I would recommend not going special purpose.
Okay. Special use permit. Mr. Latham?
Yeah, the first part of it's the zone change, and the zone change going to commercial, it is part of the comprehensive plan. It's surrounded by a lot of commercial. It's contiguous to it. The uses all around it are mostly commercial. There's Agassiz and some of those sites, and I understand that that's industrial. Most of the industrial is migrating to other parts of Post Falls. It's surrounded in the sense that you've always have Walmart that's kind of landlocked with all of the strip retail on Highway 41, and to me, it's very logical that it does go to CCS. I'm absolutely all for that. I'm just very, very mixed on multifamily as the second part of that. So that's my comments.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of agree, too. I think that the CCS move, zone change would be acceptable. It does fit, the uses would fit in there. My big concern is with the traffic getting onto 41, off of 41, going through the side to get out onto Mullen. I don't know, I'm concerned about the traffic for the multifamily there.
James?
I think the zone change I'm fine with. The future land use, it looks like it's all commercial, everything around there. I think that would fit perfectly, but putting the residential right next to industrial, my concern is the traffic again. That's why I asked the question. I think anybody that's been over there knows that it's traffic, but then, busy traffic is everybody's their own perception. So I've talked to a lot of people that have lived here their whole life, and I used to live in D.C. Traffic is totally different. It's all how you see it. But I don't think residential right next to any kind of industrial. I just feel like there's got to be some other, and there is other option that you could put other different types of commercial there. So.
Any other comments? I think ultimately, if you look, I think everybody's on board with the idea of CCS. That makes sense. But, you do have, when you look at the idea of the ideal fit for multifamily, and you have the restaurants, you have the immediate access to service, it is a fit. And there is some frustration, obviously, of multifamily being located next to industrial. And I agree. Maybe I put too much emphasis or too much responsibility on Bill and Rob, but I do when it comes to traffic, long-term plans. I do completely and totally trust their opinions on that. So that being said, at this point, I would entertain a motion, again, remembering that we have two motions that need to be made.
So a quick reminder, again, because of the way we've handled this tonight, there are the two motions. Each application has to stand on its own, can be approved independently. The zone change can be approved without approving the special use permit. If the zone change is approved, that recommendation goes to City Council, who ultimately makes a determination on whether or not the zone should be changed. If the special use permit is denied, that's a Planning Commission decision. It can be appealed, but that's a Planning Commission decision.
Well, for the, let's see, I move to recommend approval of, let me get out here. I'm sorry. ZC-17-05 Plaza 41 zone change as presented with the zoning designation of CCS.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded, call for vote.
Hampe,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Latham,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Steffensen.
Yes.
Now we're looking for a motion on the special use permit. By anyone on the commission.
I will move to disapprove SUP-17-01, Plaza 41 special use permit. As it doesn't comply in use.
Okay, so we have a motion for denial. Is there a second?
I second it.
Moved and seconded, call for vote.
Steffensen,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Davis,
No.
Latham,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Hampe.
Yes.
Okay. So moved. That takes us on to public hearing C. Tullamore North Zone Change and 7th Edition Subdivision, file number ZC-1706 and S-17-10. Manley to present. Don't take it personal.
I'm not. I'm just kind of waiting for the.
Okay. I just want to make sure, sorry.
Right. So John Manley, Planning Manager here with the City of Post Falls, introducing the Tullamore 7th zone change and subdivision. File numbers are ZC-17-06 and S-17-01. The owner is Copper Basin Construction, and the applicant representative is Lake City Engineering. The requested action is for Planning and Zoning Commission to review the zone change and the subdivision request and make a recommendation of approval to City Council, along with any appropriate conditions if necessary. So the project location, as you see here, is in the red hatched box. The surrounding zoning for this area is you have commercial down to the east and to the west along Highway 41, with it transitioning to a single-family residential zone being the yellow. Hence the zone change request for a residential subdivision. The property is generally located on Charville Road and Prairie Avenue. Prairie Avenue is right here running east-west, Charville running through Tullamore going north-south, and Highway 41 just lying to the east. The property size, for the subdivision part, it's 9.76, but when you look at the zone change, it's 9.3. There's a little sliver that's just to the west of the part of the west, just east of Charville Road, that's currently R1, that doesn't need to have the zone change. That's why there's a difference. If you saw in your staff report a difference in size, that would be why. The water provider would be Ross Point Water District, with sewer being provided by the city of Post Falls. And looking at the zone change criteria, this is the criteria set up to review whether or not the requested zone change would be potentially reviewed or denied. Is that it's assigned along following considerations of such items such as street classification and traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, geographic or natural features that encourages a balance of land uses to help Post Falls remain a desirable, stable, and sustainable community. So, in looking at this, the staff acknowledged that the current environment there is you do have, just to the south, you have a multifamily project that you are just east of Highway 41, which is going to be a commercial node, that the proposed zone change isn't necessarily inconsistent or not appropriate, but there are policies in the comprehensive plan that alluded to the fact that potentially land uses of higher density would be more appropriate, as it would put more users next to the commercial uses, but it's not necessarily, it wouldn't be considered inappropriate. Especially in light of the future land use map that we have there. We have it as being just residential. We don't delineate in the future land use as being whether it should be high density or low density. It's all residential. So the request for a residential would be appropriate considering what it has denoted on our future land use map. Commercial and high density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classification. This kind of goes back to what I just previously talked about when you look at Charville being a minor collector and Carey Avenue being a principal arterial. Oftentimes you do see land uses of higher densities at these locations. Limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from the higher intense urban activity to ensure that there's adequate land available for future housing needs. Once again, this just kind of hits that point that typically where you have a lot of uses, that's where you have your transit, your commercial activity, and other social services. So you want to stick your rooftops near that. As you proceed further away, that's where you have your lower densities. And the other one is industrial zoning, which isn't really pertinent to the zone change request. In regards to the subdivision plan, this right here is basically an overview of what the proposed subdivision is. You have Charville Road just running to the west of it, Prairie Avenue along the north. It is proposed to be a two-phase development. As you see here, here's the phase break with, I believe, 28 lots to the west of that, with another 12 lots to the east of that for phase 2. The average lot size is, as you see there, about 10,629. The density is 4.1 units per acre. There are some proposed new streets, Glenroe Avenue, Connery Loop, and then it would connect to Charville Road. There's subdivision review criteria pertaining to this decision is that definite provisions have been made for water supply that is adequate to the terms of the quantity and quality for the proposed subdivision. This proposed subdivision would be in the East Green Acres Irrigation District. Sorry. Yeah, I got a dyslexic in my mind. I was sitting on the other side of town. So yeah, Ross Point. Adequate provisions have been made for public sewage systems and that the existing municipal systems can accommodate the proposed sewer flow, and the city of Post Falls would be the sewer provider. And the proposed streets are consistent with the transportation elements of the comprehensive plan. So these are just, they'll be proposing just internal streets for this. All areas of the proposed subdivision which may be involved soil and topographic conditions presenting hazards have been identified. There really are no known issues, or there aren't any issues regarding this matter. Subdivision is zoned for the proposed use, so obviously the subdivision would be conditioned upon the zone change. If the zone change wasn't approved, then we couldn't proceed with the subdivision. And there's a condition in the staff report relating to that. Also, that the developer has made adequate plans to ensure that the community will bear no more than its fair share cost to provide services by paying fees, furnishing land, providing other mitigating measures, site impacts, streets, parks, and other public facilities within the community, and its expectations in most cases if off-site mitigations be dealt through obligations to pay development impact fees. And this would be done at the time of issuance of the permit for each building permit. They pay a portion and share to that, their mitigating impact fees. Didn't receive comments from any other agencies. So at this point, I'd stand for any questions you have for me regarding the zone change or the subdivision that's part of the staff report.
Questions for Mr. Manley?
No.
None? Thank you, sir.
John, just quickly, I know that there's needs to be 2 roads, correct, into the neighborhood eventually, right?
Well,
in order to complete phase 2.
Yes, part of that has to do with the fire access, emergency access. That's why, I mean, originally it was intended to do it in one phase, but at this point in time, the actual alignment of where that road may go on the east side is a little bit being planned at this point in time. So then it was decided we would then, not we, but the developer then decided that they could break it up in 2 phases, of which then meeting the fire obligations of keeping under 30 lots or less with a single access.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Applicant.
Good evening, Chairman Davis, fellow commissioners. Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering, 126 East Poplar Avenue in Coeur d'Alene. Happy 2018. 2 items before you tonight. Zone change, as John had said, from CCS to residential R1, and a subdivision to follow. John kind of went through the standards of approval, the review criteria for both of those, so I won't really get into that unless there's some further questions on that. I do want to point out a couple of things. Most importantly, this is a copy of your future land use map. You can see the parcel in question highlighted in black there. The yellow represents residential property on the future land use map. That's what we're asking for. It's currently zoned commercial. We're asking to change it to residential. The reason I guess we're in front of you tonight is this piece is actually not a part of the Tullamore, original Tullamore PUD. If it was, we probably wouldn't be here in front of you guys tonight with the zone change. This particular piece was not a part of that PUD when it was brought forward many years ago, 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was. So that's the reason we're coming forward with the actual separate zone change request to go from CCS to residential. Same developer, same builder. As the Tullamore project, it'll be very similar in nature to what's been built out there before with the single-family residential, so it's more of the same, but that's why we're actually bringing forward a separate zone change request. Subdivision, 40 lots, average lot size about 10,000 square feet, 4 units to the acre. I think John had addressed the secondary access. Commissioner Bishop, did he answer that question for you, or do you need me to go into it?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're phased at 25 lots. The fire marshal will let us do 25 lots with a single access. The secondary access is in its planning stages, and once that planning is complete, then obviously we'll be able to move forward with phase 2 of the subdivision. So I don't have anything further. So questions for me?
Questions for Mr. Dittman?
No.
Nope. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Public comment. Thank you. Daniel, let's see. Sure we have him here. All right, we've got, looks like none in favor, but we've got a neutral one that wishes to speak. Daniel Finley. Daniel, just come up front. State your name and address, and you have 4 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. So I'm Daniel Finley. I live at 2107 North Spokane Street, side B of that duplex. I go to NIC full-time. I drive for Domino's, actually, where you were talking about before. I never had a problem with the traffic. But anyway, I do have somewhat of a problem with the Tullamore developments because I'm not in opposition to the rezoning or the redistricting. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's very reasonable. A lot of the developments in Tullamore have been poorly designed. The roads have been updated to Google Maps. It's very hard to find addresses there. I don't use the Google Maps anymore because I don't need to, but for emergency services or other people, it's very hard to find your way in those developments. I like the look of this plan. I mean, it looks really good, looks logical and well, thought out and planned. And I'm glad to see more residential units coming to Post Falls. My real concern for the reason I'm neutral is I don't care if this is rezoned, but I am concerned about the kind of projects and how well they're designed that are coming to the residential areas. I've only lived in Post Falls for 3 years. I've only been in Idaho for 8, but I really do love this state. I consider myself an Idahoan. And things like the Latham Prairie, I think, are just beautiful and were worth preserving. And I'd like to see more actually multi-level, multi-family units coming out than these sprawling suburban, just monoliths. Just for the sake of the Latham Prairie, but also for other reasons. Post Falls is supposed to have 90,000 residents, but in the next 10 or 20 years, according to the Coeur d'Alene Press. And if most of those new developments are like this, when it's fine, we need developments, but if most of those are like this, then you're going to have Californians and other people moving in who are selling small homes for $500,000, buying these kinds of homes in cash, and it's pricing people like me out of Idaho, out of Kootenai County. I would like to see some more, and this is why I'm neutral. I'd like to see developments that are aimed at a stepping stone for Idahoans who make about $37,000 a year. It's the average wage in Kootenai County. To be able to move into home ownership, to be able to, my wife and I are currently looking for a house, and we pay almost $1,200 in rent for just half a duplex. And if we bought a house for $200,000 with a small down payment, mortgage for 15 years, we'd pay less than that mortgage per month than the rent we have in a little half duplex right now. And so that's why I'd love to see projects like these for the supply side of housing costs, but in the form of like tiny homes that still don't have a solid. Their status is not clearly defined by the law, which is unfortunate. So it's hard to get a mortgage on those to move into home ownership. I'd like to see some more rent-to-own apartment buildings, which would be real estate, which means the city or the state could generate more tax revenue off of those. And because the small square footage of those kinds of units, people like me can pony up the down payment much more easily. Working 40 hours, 2 part-time jobs, going to NIC full-time. Yeah, it's just kind of busy, and it's hard to move into home ownership when you have to compete with all these out-of-state people that are moving in. I'm from out of state. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to see developments like this, but maybe that are geared toward normal Idaho and Kootenai County people who make $37,000 if they're lucky, a year. And we can't afford this. We're not going to be able to, as housing costs rise faster than wages in the county. That's just my concern. Things for the zoning board to keep in mind. Obviously I think this makes a lot of sense, but I'm just worried about the future if all developments look like this.
Mr. Finley, thank you very much. Appreciate the comment. Mr. Nystrom, you were out, but you are back. You wish to speak, sir?
I have a really bad back, so sometimes spasms get to me at times.
Oh, no, you're fine, sir.
Okay, so I've considered this. I drive by there, I rode in there 3 or 4 days a week and by that general area. I'm for it so long as I just think that comment is about prairie. I've mentioned it to Rob Paulus that making this match when Idaho State Idaho goes and does 41, that we don't have 4-lane, a little two-lane patch, and then we're back to some adjustment there. And my only other comment is just making that side of the development look aesthetically nice, whether you step back a little bit and put a bunch of trees and maybe a stone fence or something in there that cut down the noise. Hey, I'm for that project. Okay?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Dittman, any rebuttal?
Sure. Mr. Nystrom commented on the Prairie Avenue and the Highway 41 project, and we have actually been in conversation with ITD on what their improvements are going to be, and their improvements, when they do that, a portion of it will come back on Prairie Avenue. It stops somewhere in this location. I was just looking, one of the conditions, and one of the conditions is we complete the remaining improvements of Prairie that don't get done with the Highway 41 project. We're okay with that. We understand that. We're willing to do that. So I just wanted to clarify that, as Mr. Nystrom had brought Prairie Avenue up. So any further comments for me, or questions for me, I guess?
Do you have any opposition to any of the conditions of approval?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions for staff?
Is this one vote or two? Recommendation or two? I'm sorry.
You know, I frankly can work with it either way.
Okay.
Because I go back and I draft the findings and bring them back to you. So as long as I have direction from you, I can draft it and bring it back either way.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Go ahead and close it. Any comment? Anybody?
I just think it's a logical extension, and I think it would fit good.
Yep.
I would say my only comment is that, you know, it is getting close to Highway 41, and there's this corridor of commercial, and you got to be a little bit careful about single-family homes butting up to commercial and getting close to the corridor. I'm okay with this because it's in the comprehensive plan, and I think that comprehensive plan has been thought out very well. But when I look at the subdivision plan, and I'm not letting myself get caught up in that, but when I see future streets moving to the east, that could, I don't know what that's going to happen, and who knows if to the east, if that really does, to me, make sense to pursue a zone change in the future. So for now, this makes sense. For in the future, farther east, maybe or may not, and I think I'd just like to say that for the record.
Okay. Anything else?
You know, from the zone change perspective, residential makes sense. R1 is perfectly acceptable. I think R3 would be perfectly acceptable, to be honest. I also think that, I mean, the subdivision, as a subdivision, it meets all the requirements of the subdivision code. So as long as it's zoned R1, then it meets all the requirements. So we have to approve it based on the fact that it meets all the requirements. You know, just from a planning perspective, I think fire code says 30 homes on one access. So I'd be okay with changing that phase 1 to 30 units instead of 28, but other than that, I really don't have anything else to say other than that seems fit, meets the code.
Okay. Nancy, you seemed eager to push forth a motion.
I was trying to figure out exactly where that fit in here, so. Okay, so we can bear with me. Okay. I would move to recommend approval of S-17-10, ZC-17-06, Tullamore 7th edition, finding that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the zoning codes, and adopting the findings, facts, and conclusions, one through, and conditions 1 through 12 contained in the staff report, with the zoning designation of R1.
Motion, is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Call for a vote.
Hampe,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Latham,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Steffensen,
Yes.
Okay. That moves us to the final public hearing of the evening that we will go ahead and open up, and I believe that is a Transportation Master Plan update. Mr. Melvin to present.
Chairman Davis, Commission members, tonight we have a public hearing on an update to our Transportation Master Plan. Our last update was done in 2004. We've been waiting for the economy to stabilize so that we could do some good growth projections and really formulate a good plan relative to that. The Transportation Master Plan's purpose primarily is to set short, medium, and long-range capital plans based on the projected growth and transportation growth in the area. That's the primary purpose of the plan. Once we have those capital plans established, we would then move forward and actually adopt new impact fee resolutions, utilizing the growth projections and the needs for those capital plans in there. So we would adopt impact fees to balance out the cost of those improvements. We'll be seeking this evening from the Planning and Zoning Commission is a recommendation to City Council to adopt the Transportation Master Plan update. So that is the motion we'll be seeking. Presenting this evening would be Jeremy Clark with David Evans Associates. Jeremy and David Evans were the consultants developing the Transportation Master Plan for the community. So that, we'll turn it over to Jeremy.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. So as Bill mentioned, I will be giving a very brief kind of overview of the Transportation Master Plan. Master Plan update. This has been a several-year process, and so I want to make sure I cover, touch on that presentation format. So as we go through this, if there are any questions, it'd be a lot easier to answer if I don't mind being interrupted if you have any questions that come up. As Bill mentioned, we've been working on this with the city staff. That's himself, Rob Paulus, John Manley, and also Russ Canoli. The consultant staff are listed there as well, myself and 3 others in our Coeur d'Alene and Spokane offices. So our Coeur d'Alene office is 663 West Canfield Avenue. Project introduction. The original Transportation Master Plan was completed by David Evans and Associates back in 2004. Since then, there's been an impact fee program and an update to the capital improvement plan that was completed in 2011. The focus of the plan is to develop a fiscally constrained improvement plan. That's going to come up a few times. So by fiscally constrained, a plan that we can afford, that the city can afford to pay for. Also to enhance the multimodal network. That was a big focus of this update, both based on city needs, city desires, and also public feedback. We got feedback both ways in that area. And finally, to incorporate stakeholder input into the projects. There was a very large stakeholder outreach and open house and public involvement process. Some more background. Since the 2004 plan, there have been significant changes to the land use and population. As you can see, back in 2004, the population was about 17,000, and it was projected out to 38,000. Now we are, or in 2014, when everything started with the data collection, that baseline has changed to 32,000, so nearly reaching the projections, and new forecasts, as were mentioned previously, are in the paper for over 90,000. That correlates to the dwelling units that are expected as one of the indicators, expected to grow from 15,000 roughly to 36,000 by 2035. And so those changes in land use are pivotal and the reason behind updating the Transportation Master Plan to accommodate that with the transportation network. Additional evolution since 2004, that enhanced focus on multimodal transportation. That includes transit, bicycle, and pedestrian, so all other modes besides just pedestrian vehicles. Being able to accommodate that mode through the city with sidewalks, shared use paths, bus stops, taking those into account when planning the network. Also, the impact fee income and fiscal constraints. So we looked at the impact fees that are currently in place, correlated those to trips as we measure them through the travel demand modeling and projections to define what funds are available over the 5, 10, and 20-year horizons to fund projects. So the purpose of a transportation master plan, two of the basic purposes are the functional roadway classification. So what roads are out there? What roads need to be there as we grow into the future? That is also used to define typical street sections, what the lane widths should be, where those street sections should be placed, whether there should be a center turn lane, where the sidewalks should be, shared use paths. All those typical elements of streets are defined through the transportation master plan. But the ultimate product, as most people will tell you, is the capital improvement plan. What projects are recommended, what projects should be built and when to accommodate future growth, and a capital improvement plan that is laid out so that they can be selected from as growth occurs. For example, as subdivisions come up, that may accelerate a project in a certain area that is going to see more growth. So since 2004, of the capital improvement plan projects, there have been 16 completed. 6 of those were currently under construction. This was as of about 8 months ago, and the additional 3 are under design. Now, that was updated in 2011. So since 2011, 11 of those have been completed. So there's been significant work done to complete the projects that were in the plan. One thing that's important to note is that impact fee funding is limited to documented future deficiencies. So if there is a deficiency on the network that is current today, that cannot be funded by impact fees. And so that's where it comes into play that it's very important to identify future deficiencies before they become existing deficiencies. And so it's important to update that transportation master plan. That was one of the steps of this plan, was to include that in the budgeting for future updates as they become necessary, and keep the plan current. Here's a very quick overview of what we did. So this will be very short. If you have any questions, we'll go into some of these a little bit more in detail. So we compiled the network inventory, evaluated where the current system stands operationally, gathered public input significantly, projected future growth using the KMPO travel demand model that was focused in on City of Post Falls, so we created a sub-area model, identified where that growth would occur and what deficiencies would be expected to occur, and then provided recommendations for the projects. So the public input was a huge part of this plan. Here's a list of several of the different areas that we sought feedback. So the first kickoff was just to find citizen concerns. There was no data. There was just an opportunity to find out where citizens thought there would be growth, where they thought they could see improvements going into place. We followed that up with the collection of data and analyzing that data and finding the no-build conditions for the next 5, 10, and 20 years, and showed that to the public. And this is an example of the picture up there, I believe, of that open house. And gathered the reactions to where they actually find out where deficiencies are expected to occur and how they would fix those, what kind of improvements, whether it's a signal or roundabout, whether they want left turn lanes everywhere, whether they want a 4-lane road or a 2-lane road. Perhaps they want additional roads, not just wider roads. Those kind of questions were asked. We had two multimodal stakeholder forums, and so what those were, they included Centennial Trail Association, cities of Coeur d'Alene, Hayden, emergency services, different concerning parties that are focused on multimodal use, CityLink, Kootenai County, and to find out where we should go in this area. And so the biggest identifiers for direction and where a policy shift. Being able to promote and fund multimodal facilities is contingent upon having those facilities be available. And so a shift in how they're laid out and designed and also maintained was a big focus. Highlighting the benefits of the facilities, such as the Centennial Trail, where that can bring in business and focusing on that and using that to push forward other facilities and also the priorities for the locations. Interagency meetings were held with ITD, Post Falls Highway District, KMPO, and emergency services as we went through the process to identify what projects we are recommending and also gather feedback on where other agencies were providing projects, such as State Highway 41 and the I-90 corridor. We then completed a city council workshop, gathered more feedback, and now our final plan recommendations were a few months ago where we presented those to the public and gathered feedback and any updated recommendations that there were. So what we found through the process, I very lightly touched on it with those little blue boxes, but we have the existing no build, and then we developed the travel demand modeling and estimated volumes in the future, and that's all based on land use. So has the the comprehensive plan laid out future land use. We worked with John and the city staff to identify more than just swaths of land. We looked at rooftops, we looked at employees, we looked at every use there could be and had that amount of specificity in the model to send trips through the network. And so we did that for 2020, 2025, and 2035 to develop these short, medium, and long-term projections. And what we found was that generally the roadway segments are ample. That there's not enough traffic, even with 90,000 expected residents, to really drive up to these wide 4- and 6-lane wide roadways. But the intersections are where the improvements are going to be needed. And a lot of those intersections are close together with some drives out the sides of the road. From here, we looked at some of the build conditions, but some of the no builds, here's some pictures. And the colors that matter here are the green, yellow, and red. So green is good, red is bad. That's where we're expecting them to fail. So this is 2014 data. And you see some red dots that are already on the map. The good news is those were all included in the 2004 or 2011 plan. So they're all documented future deficiencies. And so we are able to fund those projects for improvement, or they're actually planned for improvements. And as we move forward to 2020, you see some more red intersections popping up. A lot of them along Highway 41 and then growing north from the city center. And into 2025, they spread farther north and typically north and east into 2035. And largely where the area is expected to grow and most of the trips are expected to grow in the city are to the north and to the east, heading up the Prairie to Highway 41.
Jeremy, can you explain to it, is the no build basically a whole bunch of growth with no improvement changes?
Very minimal improvement changes. And so those included what projects were funded as of 2014, actually as of 2015, were funded and planned to be completed, and essentially are completed. So no, the 2041 plan is not considered in the no build. The Celtice-Mullen signals are not considered in the no build. That's correct.
Okay, so this is basically 20 years of no roadway improvements, but 20 years of growth.
Correct.
Okay.
This shows us where the growth will occur and where it's going to impact, where we need to start planning. And then as you include improvements, that changes the network. So our future horizons for the build conditions assume several different projects that were going to be in place. We started with the ITD State Highway 41 Corridor Master Plan. That will be going from Mullen Avenue to, I believe it's Lancaster or Bagel, up to Rathdrum. And so that was included as the 4-lane divided highway that it will be. However, the quarter-mile and half-mile backage roads they're not included with the ITD plan. And so those were included in the Post Falls capital improvement plans, and we phased them north by the different horizons. So by 2020, we wanted to make sure there was backage roads in place up to Horse Haven. 2025 went up to Pole Line and all the way up to Prairie by 2035 to accommodate that. These are mostly assumed to be put in by development as it occurs along that corridor, but there was funding set aside for fill-in sections of roadway. And also, 8th mile backage roads are being identified and planned at this time to lessen that quarter-mile length and make it more feasible to have backage into all the commercial properties along 41 as they eliminate access onto 41. Other previously identified projects that were included include the Celtice-Mullen congestion mitigation study improvements. Those were 6th Avenue, just north of the interstate where it connects to the ramp. That creates a frontage road concept. Similarly, on 5th Avenue on the south side of the interchange is a frontage road, except right here where it goes through the city parking lot, so it doesn't connect to Spokane Street. as well as the 4th and Idaho roundabout and some kind of intersection at 4th and Celtice, whether it's a signal or a roundabout there to reopen that ramp to the south side of the interstate. So with those projects assumed, we then went through and identified what projects would need to be in place to get rid of the red dots, to improve operations above level of service E or D, depending on the type of facility or type of intersection. And we included those fiscal constraints. So the way we did that was converting the existing impact fees to expected growth. Right now, they're based on land use. So what we measured in this plan were trips. So what kind of trips were grown. So we converted those over to trips, estimated the next 5, 10, and 20 years of revenue from the impact fees and what's currently in the coffer, and adjusted all of our projects over the next 5, 10, and 20 years to fit in those constraints. Some other long-term improvements that came up as we were discussing this with Post Falls Highway District and KMPO and ITD were the I-90 corridor study that was recently completed for ITD, which includes some pretty major recommendations, which could change the whole face of I-90 as it goes through Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene. The Hutter bypass impact was not included in the Transportation Master Plan for a very specific reason. That is because if the Hutter bypass is installed, that will be a very major shift in traffic through Post Falls. And so by planning without it, we are planning essentially for a worst case type condition. And as that goes in, as we recommended these updates of the Transportation Master Plan, that would be incorporated, or as it becomes more solidified, that could be incorporated into the plan. Also, potential impact to the traffic patterns through Post Falls with these changes to I-90. We're expected to be pretty extreme, whether there's an interchange at Greens Ferry, what happens to the interchange at State Highway 41. If anything changes between the Spokane Street and Celtice Way ramps with ITD's I-90 plan. So with all these taken into account, we identified 2035 projects, but they were not identified in a capital improvement plan. They're listed so that they're identified as future deficiencies, but the funding to accommodate all of those types of projects is pretty extreme and extremely unknown given the amount of fluctuation that we're expecting to see over the next 5 to 10 years with ITD's plans along I-90 and State Highway 41.
Jeremy, can you tell us what major interchanges would be included in the I-90 corridor study through Post Falls?
Yes, so I believe it went from the state line to Sherman, I believe is where, Sherman Northwest Boulevard, but it includes some of the major ones were Celtice Way and evaluating how that would work with Spokane Street 4 directional ramps and versus the 2-sided interchange at Celtice. Then evaluating that. There's still discussion of Greens Ferry and whether or not that is an overpass or an interchange. They looked at the impact of that and also State Highway 41 and redoing that interchange. And then also looking at Hutter and how that would impact. The first project to come out of that is the State Highway 41 interchange. And so as was mentioned earlier, we've just begun getting started on that and looking at different alternatives. But that project alone, combined with the amount of capacity that's going to be available on Highway 41, will change how traffic filters through the city of Post Falls. Right now, most traffic that goes to the residential areas gets off at Spokane Street and goes to the north and to the east, which goes through Celtice Way, Mullen Avenue, Idaho. And as capacity increases on Highway 41, which many people avoid, that'll change the patterns through the city.
Would it be fair to say that an interchange at Greens Ferry would relieve Celtice Way or Spokane Street in a pretty major way?
Oh, I think it would definitely have an impact. Yes, I believe it would. It's just a matter of how that would weighing the pros and cons of the kind of the density of the interchanges in the area and how that would change Celtice or 41. Yep. And so moving on to the summary, essentially, is where we've made it to right now, is our capital improvement projects. So we developed a series of maps that are included in the plan, makes them very easy to distribute. A lot of information is contained on this map. So we have the project location. This is accompanied by the list of capital improvement plan projects that matches what was used back in 2004 as far as information that's provided. But it has a project number that you can find and reference. It has the relative cost. So we have color coding by cost of the project, whether it's assumed by others like development or other agencies. Also, different types of project improvements, depending on which quadrant of the circle is highlighted, and also where the boundaries of the city are there as well. So those are an example of how the data is presented and summarized. Very abbreviated discussion that I've had here today, but this is where the project ended up for recommendation. This is 2025, so that was the short term. This is the medium-term plan for as traffic continues to grow. As you can see through the two of these, this is the more widespread, spread out area, fixing what deficiencies are there now in the next few years and kind of accompanying the City Highway 41 plan. And then it gets a little more focused in 2025 as the growth starts to being observed. And so those projects that we recommended, this is a rundown of how the expected impact fee revenue is expected to progress. As of 2014, the estimated amount that was in the account was a little over $2 million. Based on the growth that's expected to occur, these were all based on Kootenai County, or actually KMPO land use projections, and so we had constraints we had to stay within that regional travel demand model. And so the City of Post Falls has their allocation of land use to use. By 2020, that was expected to be just under $4 million of earnings and impact fees, and just over another $4 million by the time you get to 2025 in impact fees. And so those were our goals. Initially, we had those all in range, and then through the process of identifying prioritization and when projects need to be completed, we're still pretty close on that. As you can see, the estimated project costs in 2020 are $4.3 million, and 2025 are $4.25. And so those are close. That does provide some flexibility. And this is all just based on impact fees. It doesn't include any general fund projects or grant fund projects. And so that's where additional funding may be sought out for that delta in the impact fees versus project costs. Kind of shifting over from the traditional capital improvement plan section of the plan to multimodal emphasis, unless there's any questions before we move on.
Can you go back to the impact fees? So $2.8 million equates to about 16, almost 1,700 single-family homes. So is this based on our growth and what we've been seeing recently, is this just impact fees total, or is this impact fees minus projects that are funded?
This is impact fees total.
This is what we expect to get in impact fees if we were to let growth just go?
Correct.
Okay. I seem to remember our traffic impact fees being pretty significant this year, our revenue from them. I got the end of the year report, but I don't have that in front of me. So, anyway, okay. Thank you.
So on the multimodal side, again, this incorporates bicycle use, pedestrian use, transit use, also travel to and from locations such as parks and schools and libraries and government facilities. There's a three-step process. First, we identified the need, and that was going through quite a bit of stakeholder input and gathering public opinion. Conduct outreach to solidify that and decide what kind of projects would be recommended, and then come up with the recommendations. And so these 5 recommendations generally cover what were recommended with the multimodal improvement plan. And there's a separate plan in this document for multimodal improvements, as they're not funded by impact fees directly. A lot of the projects that are recommended with the capital improvement plan include multimodal elements as they are associated with the street sections, but the projects in the multimodal plan are solely based on multimodal improvements as they're not a capacity issue. So the engineering and maintenance policy shift, that is more of a soft project or a soft recommendation, as not a hard project, but being able to focus on the maintenance of those facilities, plowing in the winter, sweeping in the summer, making sure the facilities are available. If you're going to be investing in a facility, it needs to be maintainable. And so using that in the design process for how they're laid out and how they're built and being able to maintain them. That plays into role of what kind of facilities used, whether it's a shared use path, which is separated, a little bit tougher to maintain, versus a buffered bicycle lane, which can be plowed with the street. Celtice Way was a big point of discussion. That's seen as a centerpiece through Post Falls. It goes from the state line into Coeur d'Alene. So identifying sections of that road and how they can have a multimodal element throughout the city. That is a large endeavor, and so that was a big chunk of the multimodal plan, is identifying how that can be a shifting point or a turning point in the multimodal use through the city. Emphasis on planning for Class 1 trails was a close second, so building upon the Centennial Trail and the Prairie Trail, and planning on what the city's already planned for some of the other trail locations, and reserving the necessary connections to that downtown core between the green spaces and the schools, but also whatever corridors are already out there as far as railroad and utility corridors, maximizing the space that's available for making those connections. So the result of these, some examples of the trail alignments that are currently recommended. We have the Riverside Trail as it goes towards the state line. It skirts along the river. There's currently right-of-way that the city has along the old Corbin Ditch, and so the possibility of a trail or a route along that alignment is included in the plan, and connecting along Pleasant View to get down to the Riverside Trail, and then connecting back into the Centennial Trail by the time it gets to Corbin Park. And this is an example of how the projects, similar to the capital improvement plan, are summarized with the multimodal plan. As you can see, there are a lot of projects, a lot of small projects in here, sidewalk projects, sections of trail, and those types of facilities, improving roadways to accommodate pedestrian or bicycle travel. And also recommendations, as we worked with Kootenai Transit, who operate CityLink, and worked through the system. And one of the recommendations that we had early on for the route through Post Falls made it into their recommendations of the blue route and how that currently goes. Now it'll be coming down, I think it already does actually. It started coming down through the south side of the interstate into Post Falls. So any questions on the multimodal aspect of the plan? Am I talking too fast? No. Good. That's it. So that is our summary, and I guess I didn't take any time off the 15-minute clock, but that's our summary of
start over.
of the plan. And so I would welcome any questions that you have or any recommendations. At this point, we're requesting it to be advanced to City Council for adoption.
Okay. Any questions?
No, I don't have
If there's none, then I guess we would need a motion to forward this.
It's a public hearing, right?
Yes.
Do you have any people to?
Do we have anyone wanting to speak? We do. Oh. Thanks, Ray.
Sorry.
Jocelyn Mack does not wish to speak, but is in opposition. Read the article on Greens Ferry Road South rebuilding. Foreman Bridge for traffic use possibility. I'm puzzled as why another road bridge so close to the existing Spokane Street one. It's only 2 minutes in distance. Why not put it 2 to 4 miles to the east of Greens Ferry Road, where it'll be closer to the main road connections to Highway 41 and Hutter Road, Atlas Road, Highway 95. It makes no sense financially. 2 miles. Okay. Oh, did I say 2 minutes? I meant 2 miles. I do apologize. Okay?
So, can I ask a question about that?
You can approach.
Yeah, I don't really wanna.
Okay, that's the only way that we can get you under recording.
Because I'm not opposed to all of the transportation, just that bridge.
Ma'am, if you're going to testify, you have to come up here. We have to record this. So if you don't want to do that, you want to catch one of us afterwards, maybe we can answer your questions.
Okay. So it's my understanding she's not opposed to the transportation itself, it's just the bridge itself. Okay, duly noted. Thank you very much. No in favor, no neutral?
No.
Okay. Any rebuttal?
Just one comment on the bridge. That was actually, it's a little bit confusing. The Post Falls Highway District is also completing their transportation master plan right now. So that is actually a Post Falls Highway District project.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Go ahead and close the public hearing. Open it up for comment.
I think they've done a very good job and have put a heck of a lot of work into this. That was a very detailed study. I think I was a little mind boggled by the 200 and some pages of appendices, I even think. Or maybe 300 pages. It was pretty ridiculous. I hope in the future, Post Falls suffers from lack of access to I-90 compared to Spokane Valley, and Coeur d'Alene. And Post Falls is, like it or not, and I think it's a good thing, Post Falls is a bedroom community for a lot of people that live here, work in either Spokane or Coeur d'Alene or elsewhere, and it's not a bad thing. It's a matter of fact, I think it's a great thing that we have affordable housing and people like to live in Post Falls. But I think a lot of our traffic problems are commute-based, and they're based on the fact that we've got, where the majority of our population is housed anyway, there's not very good access to the interstate. You get, the commutes or Spokane Street and I-90 are horrible. Highway 41, add that to Rathdrum, it's traffic, and it's horrible. It's even worse. So I just hope in the future that we can look forward to maybe adding more freeway access, Greens Ferry, maybe even McGuire, and adding those 1 mile interchanges so that we have better access to the interstate so that it relieves congestion in places like Spokane Street and Highway 41. Although I know it's not on our capital improvement plan or part of this transportation master plan, essentially I hope that we push the regional people to be looking at those things and potentially funding them.
Duly noted. Any other comment? Okay. And at this time, I believe we'd be looking to entertain a motion to forward this on to City Council for approval.
With regards to the transportation master plan update, I would move that we recommend approval of the transportation master plan update and move forward to City Council. I believe, is that the correct motion? Move it forward, City Council, as presented.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Steffensen,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Latham,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Hampe.
Yes.
All right. Brings us to item number 11 this evening, new business. Mr. Manley, is there any new business this evening?
No.
Followed with staff comment. Any staff comment?
Yeah, I think, Warren, if you want to
Yeah,
address
so I'm wondering who of you might be available for a special call meeting, say Friday afternoon, Friday evening, where we would convene telephonically. We'd like to have you approve the findings for the last meeting's hearing items. The 3 annexation items are going to council next week. It'd be nice to get those approved before they get to the council. So just checking to see about your availability, or let you know that we're looking to do that, and then we can reach out to you and try to set something up. It literally is a 5-minute deal. Call in, we convene telephonically and approve them.
I would be open to it.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think
I can make
Sure.
that.
Sounds like we'll all available.
I think so.
Perfect, thank you.
Staff will set that up then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other staff comments? No? Commissioner comments? Anything for the good of the order?
Nope.
I would like to just say, Mr. Finley, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you speaking. Very often, we don't have young people that are coming in and are actually engaged in their community, so I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate that.
I agree.
Anything else for the good of the order? And I would entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.